Hello everyone, welcome back to the Vietnamese Ghost Stories YouTube channel. Today I will tell you a true story told by my grandparents. The story is called Human Disguise. Please listen. It was getting dark. The last rays of sunlight retreated from the distant mountains, giving way to the ink-black forest shadows that flowed down the trail leading to the coconut hamlet. The cold wind blew from the deep forest in gusts, carrying a musty, damp smell mixed with the faint scent of blood of unknown origin. The old people in the village, who were used to the rustling of leaves and the growling of wild animals at night, suddenly felt goosebumps every time the wind blew through the cracks in the door. That day, Nam and Han, the newlyweds, officially left their parents' house and moved into a hut at the edge of the forest. The small wooden house that Nam had built 2 months earlier was nestled among ancient trees. Behind was a dense mountain slope. In front was a small, clear stream that babbled day and night. The distance from their house to the village was just over 3 kilometers, but it took almost an hour to walk, because the dirt road was winding, with both sides full of wild grass and reeds so dense that they seemed to want to swallow people whole. Han carried the last basket into the house, turned to her husband and smiled. "So that's it, honey. We have our own house." Nam smiled and replied, his smile revealing his pride. "Yes, it's quiet here, but it's quiet. We can grow some vegetables and raise chickens and ducks to make a living." They didn't know that behind those dense trees, something was watching them, quietly, longingly. When he heard that the young couple planned to move to live near the forest, Mr. Muoy, an old man who lived nearly 100 years, famous for keeping many old stories of the village, waved his hand and shouted, "No! Don't stay there. That land is not clean. Someone went missing in the past." He told the story. That year, 3 young men went into the forest to hunt deer. They left in the morning and didn't return in the afternoon. That night, the whole village heard screams coming from the forest like the sound of people being torn apart. When the villagers came in, they only found a pile of fresh blood, a few torn pieces of clothing, and claw marks as long as a knife blade scratching the ground. "That tiger, but not an ordinary tiger. It's a ghost tiger, a spirit tiger." The old man hissed, his eyes cloudy and filled with tears. Nam laughed heartily. "That's an old story, old man. I went up there to live, not to hunt in the deep forest." Old Moy didn't say anything more, just stroked his beard and looked at the young couple with an uneasy gaze. On the first night in the new house, Han couldn't sleep. Her eyes kept looking toward the small window where the dark forest was like a living wall. Occasionally, the rustling of leaves sounded like someone was walking outside, and the hoot of an owl echoed eerily. Nam, lying next to her, was already fast asleep, his breathing even. Han moved closer, her hand holding her husband's arm. Then suddenly a screech tore through the night from the deep forest. It was not like the sound of an animal that she usually heard. It was long, sharp like a human scream in pain. Han woke up with a start, her hands shaking, but Nam was still fast asleep, not moving at all. The screech repeated again, closer. This time, Han was sure she had not heard wrongly. The sound seemed to come from the edge of the forest, only a few dozen steps away from their house. The next morning, Han told her husband about it. Nam frowned. "I didn't hear anything. You must have been dreaming. There are all kinds of sounds in the forest." Han did not say anything more, but her eyes were still fixed on the trees. That day, Nam put his crossbow on his shoulder and told his wife, "I'll go along the stream. Watch out for wild chickens or something to catch and eat. No one sells them here. You have to take care of them yourself." Han nodded. Nam walked away, his figure gradually disappearing in the white mist rising from the stream. She stood there watching until she could no longer see her husband's figure. Han did not expect that was the last time she saw Nam in person. Nam left early in the morning. By noon, the sun had begun to set behind the gray clouds, but he had not returned. Han could not sit still, anxiously looking toward the stream. Every time she heard the rustling of leaves, she would startle and look out, but it was all just the wind. No one was coming back. Afternoon fell. It started to rain. The wind howled in long gusts like a howl from the underworld. The chickens in the coop suddenly flapped their wings wildly, crying out in alarm. Before Han could react, a heavy thud sound came from the yard, as if something large had just stepped on the wet ground. "Is that Nam?" she called out, but only the sound of the wind answered. Suddenly, from the edge of the trees, something appeared, but it did not come closer, just stood there, half of its body hidden in the darkness. Han strained her eyes to look, then backed away. Not Nam, not a human either. It was a huge creature, nearly 2 meters tall, hunched over like a reptile. Its body was covered in mottled yellow and black fur, its green eyes glowing in the darkness, staring intently at the wooden house. It stood there for only a few seconds, then turned and ran into the forest, so fast that Han didn't have time to scream. That night, Han didn't dare to sleep. She locked the door, lit 3 incense sticks, and placed them on the small ancestral altar. The incense smoke drifted in long streaks, entwined like invisible hands beckoning. Near midnight, the wind suddenly stopped, and a strong, fishy smell began to fill the house, like the smell of rotting raw meat, blood, torn flesh. "Russell! Russell!" Something was scratching at the back wall of the house, gently, persistently. "Russell! Russell!" Han held her breath. The scratching stopped, then a bloody human hand slowly reached up to the window frame. The nails were abnormally long, rough like animal claws. And then a face appeared. It was Nam. His eyes were bloodshot. His skin was pale, cracked, and bloody. His lips moved, but the sound that came out was not human. "Han, open the door for me." Han froze. Her hands were stiff, unable to move. She wanted to scream, to run, but her feet felt like they were nailed to the wooden floor. Nam, or something that looked like Nam, just clung to the window, knocking in fragments, like someone who had been dead for a long time, trying to remember how to communicate with the living. The next morning, Han woke up on the floor, cold. The window was wide open. There were human footprints and animal claw marks on the ground next to the door. The ground was torn up and there was a trail of blood that stretched into the forest. The villagers heard the news and rushed to look for him. They followed the blood trail into the forest, along the stream where Nam often hunted wild chickens. About half a kilometer later, they stopped under an ancient tree as big as a house. The tree roots rose up like bony hands, embracing a corpse that was no longer intact. No one dared to go near. That was what was left of Nam, a piece of torn shirt, a few strands of hair caught on a branch, and a human leg lying in a pool of coagulated blood. An old man in the group whispered, "It was eaten. Not an ordinary animal. The thing that ate it and left a human shape." Under the tree, people saw a large bloodstain as if someone had been dragged a long distance. Next to it were sharp claw marks, nearly a hand's length long. Each claw mark seemed to cut deep into the ground as if some ferocious beast had crawled through here. Then a young man, more curious than necessary, tried to follow the blood trail and disappeared. It wasn't until the evening, when the group returned to the village, that the boys' screams echoed from the deep forest. But when they turned back to look, all they saw was a pair of sandals lying at the base of a bloody tree. No body, no trace, only a line written in blood on the tree trunk. "I'm back." 3 days after the discovery of Nam's remains, dark clouds rolled in, covering the entire forest. The rain continued from morning to afternoon, then from afternoon to night without stopping for a moment. The stream in front of Han's house was red, the water overflowing up to the doorstep. The chickens and ducks were silent. Even the sound of insects had disappeared. No one dared to go to Han's house anymore. She locked the door alone, sat quietly by the oil lamp, hugged her husband's old shirt, occasionally brought it to her nose, trying to inhale the familiar scent that had gradually faded. Her eyes were sunken, dark, her expression haggard, like a person who had lost her soul. Han had not slept since the first night she saw Nam's face appear at the window. When the clock pointed to midnight, heavy footsteps sounded from outside the door. Step by step, slowly, steadily, Han held her breath. Her hands tightly gripped the old wooden beads that her mother had left behind, trembling slightly. Then a voice rang out. It was Nam's voice, deep and familiar. "And open the door. I'm cold." She stiffened, tears welling up, her mouth stammering. "Nam, is it you?" There was no response, only the sound of fingernails scraping the door. "Kosh, kosh, kosh." Then a ket-gate sound rang out. The door swung open. Nam stood there, his whole body drenched in rain. He was wearing the same shirt he wore on the day he went hunting, covered in dried blood. His eyes were pitch black, no whites visible, no emotion. "Have you waited for me long?" Han shouted, but her throat felt choked, unable to make a sound. She stepped back, trembling. Nam stepped in. With each step he took, the floor seemed to shake. A streak of bright red water, not rainwater, followed his footsteps. The pungent smell of blood filled the small house. "Don't you miss me? I'm back." His icy cold hand rested on her cheek. His unusually long nails lightly scratched her skin, leaving a bloody trail. And then he smiled, a twisted smile tearing his entire face apart. His teeth were growing in a mess like an animal's, red and covered with bits of flesh. "I'm hungry." The next morning, the wooden house was nothing but ruins. The wood was broken and rotten. The windows were torn open. The walls were covered in blood. No one saw Han. No one saw Nam either. The villagers quickly gathered. A group of more than 10 strong men, carrying sticks, torches, and machetes, led by the village chief, a strict man who believed in science and always rejected ghosts. They went into the forest. Less than 2 hours later, only 3 people returned. Their bodies were covered in blood, their faces pale, their bodies shaking as if they had malaria. "It's not human," one person mumbled. It crawled on all fours like a wild animal, but it had a human face, Nam's face. The village chief did not return. The survivors said that he was dragged into the bushes, only having time to scream. "Run! It is not human!" Then came the sound of bones breaking, the sound of flesh being torn, and silence. That night, no one in the village dared to sleep. The dogs howled in long bursts, staring at the forest as if they saw something that human eyes could not see. At nearly 3 a.m., knocking sounded simultaneously on the doors of 3 houses in the village. The knocking rhythm was even and cold. Knock, knock, knock. The people inside did not dare to open the door. But behind each door, one could hear the whispers of a dead relative. "Open up, it's me." A child heard his mother, who had died of malaria 3 years ago, calling his name. He stepped out, opened the door. All one could hear was a shrill scream. When they ran over, there was only a black shadow crawling on all fours, sliding across the roof and disappearing into the forest. The next morning, Mr. Moy quietly took out an ancient book, wrapped in coarse cloth, covered in the dust of time. He sat by the fire, turning each page, reading silently. Tiger spirit, a demonic beast that lives for hundreds of years, can imitate human form, eats memories, eats speech, eats affection, appears when the seal of the sacred forest is broken. He looked out into the forest, his eyes sunken, his voice hoarse. "You have released the demon." That night the moon was full, but the moonlight was not as bright as usual. It was murky, red as if stained with blood. The whole village was immersed in an eerie light, flickering like a ghost lurking behind the mist. Under the moonlight, the ragged thatched roofs cast sharp, twisted shadows like the claws of a demon. The smell of blood was still strong in the wind, not dissipating, not diluting, but lingering as if whispering something to the surviving souls. The 3 remaining men from the search the previous afternoon were locked in Mr. Moy's house. They kept trembling, their eyes wild, their lips stuttering as if they were seeing some horror in their heads. It couldn't die, stabbed the heart. It still crawled, still laughed. One of them banged his head against the wall. Blood splattered everywhere, his mouth screaming. That face was human, but underneath was tiger skin, tiger skin. Then he passed out. From his mouth, a long, black-yellow curved hair like a poisonous thorn protruded. Everyone in the village shuddered when they saw it. Mr. Moy sat pensively in front of the ashes, took out a brush pen dipped in chicken blood, and wrote on the yellowed talisman. His hands trembled, sweat beaded on his forehead. It is the tiger spirit, an ancient evil creature. When it eats a person, it not only takes the bodies, but also the soul, the memories, and disguises itself as that person to approach those familiar to us. It is the demon with the most familiar face to us. One person asked, "Is there any way to kill it, sir?" Mr. Moy shook his head, his voice filled with sadness. "Only when we know its real name can we seal it. But who dares to approach and ask for its name? Who is enough to survive after facing it?" That night, the sound of mourning drums resounded from the end of the village. No one in the village beat the drums. The drum had been removed more than 10 years ago after an epidemic that killed more than half the villagers. But now it rang out by itself, beat by beat, dark and heavy like the judgment drum of Hades. At the same time, dark clouds obscured the moon, and a roar tore through the night from the forest. The roar was not human, nor was it a tiger's. It was like both mixed together, terrifying and twisted. Then a shadow appeared on the top of the slope. It stood on 2 legs, wearing torn human skin. Its face was still Nam's face, but its mouth stretched all the way to its ears, dripping with blood. Its eyes bulged out, bloodshot. Its 2 arms were long like an ape's, its claws as sharp as knives. "Who still remembers me?" Its voice was like hundreds of mouths speaking at once, echoing in each person's head. The children cried out. The adults quickly locked the doors, turned off the lights, and bowed to the ground to pray. But the shadow did not disappear. It crawled on all 4s, crawling across each roof. Each time it passed, the roof collapsed as if it had been crushed by something weighing hundreds of kilograms. A scream rang out from Mr. Tam's house, where the last surviving man was staying. People only had time to run over, saw the door shattered, blood splattered all over the wall, and a piece of human skin peeled off hanging right in the middle of the house. On the skin was engraved a scorched line. "Do you still remember who I am?" At this time, Mr. Moy gathered all the remaining villagers at the village communal house, using lime powder and chicken blood to draw an ancient spell around them. Everyone sat close together. No one dared to take their eyes off the fire in the middle of the communal house yard. A trembling girl asked him, Can he come in here?" He looked out of the pavilion, his voice hoarse. "If the moon hasn't set yet, it's still strong. This charm can hold out, but not for long." Suddenly, the fire in the middle went out for no reason. No wind, no rain, no one touched it. In the darkness, there was the sound of claws lightly scratching the pavilion wall. Kach, kach, kach. Then a familiar voice, which had once softened Han's heart, rang out. "Man, go away. Don't hide anymore." "I'm back." People turned to look at each other. No one dared to breathe heavily. The shadow outside the door slowly slid through the crack of light. It was no longer pretending to be human. It was the shape of a monster in human form, but half of its face still had Nam's face, The other half was rotten like a corpse. Its fangs were sharp. Its eyes glowed like two smoldering coals. Then it let out a long howl. Blood began to flow from the cracks in the pavilion wall. As soon as dawn broke, Mr. Moy gathered a group of 4 of the bravest people in the village, those who had been through life and death in the jungle. Mr. Lap, the hunter, Mrs. Diem, the shaman, his nephew Kang, and Mr. Tu, who had studied Taoism in Ngayan. The 4 of them headed with Mr. Moy toward the ancient banyan tree in the middle of the forest, where more than 70 years ago it had been used as an altar to suppress the tiger spirit. Legend has it, once upon a time there was a white tiger that lived for more than 100 years, absorbing negative energy and becoming a demon. It ate more than 40 people in the area. Finally, the shaman suppressed it under the banyan tree with virgin blood and an ancient spell. But the curse only lasted 70 years, and this year was the 71st year. As the group entered the forest, the air became strangely thick and heavy. The birds did not chirp. The wind did not blow. The leaves did not fall. Everyone seemed to hold their breath before something that was waiting. When they reached the ancient banyan tree, they saw the mud and dirt being turned upside down, and deep scratches were clearly visible around the roots, as if something had crawled up from underground. A skull with hair still intact was hanging from a branch. The hair was long, jet black, and covered in dried blood. Mr. Moy's face turned pale. "It's Han." Under the banyan tree, there was a deep hole, not a natural hole, but like a den dug out with claws. From within it emanated a suffocating, putrid smell of corpses. In the darkness below, dozens of pairs of red eyes were blinking, like snakes. Master Tu threw a talisman into the hole and read aloud, "Heaven's spirit and earth's evil. Demons and ghosts have revealed their true form." Immediately, a roar rang out from underground. The banyan tree shook. From the deep hole, a giant tiger emerged, but the upper half of its body was human. It was Nam's face, swollen and bloody. The lower half of its body was a tiger, with whiskers and hair bristling, and long claws like a sickle. Mrs. Deem was shocked. "Bull. It has absorbed the souls of those who ate it. Now it is no longer a demon, but a combination of many vengeful souls reuniting." It howled, and from the hole emerged countless human hands. Black shadows in the shape of villagers, but with empty faces, only black blood flowing from their eye sockets. They were neither dead nor alive, just silently walking towards the village, dragging the tiger spirit's shadow through the forest trees like a will-o'-the-wisp. In the village, the elders began to have convulsions. Their mouths simultaneously spoke a name. Kavan. That was the name of the tiger spirit from back then. Mr. Moy shouted, "That is its real name, the sealed name. Anyone who knows its name will weaken it." He immediately told the young people to carve that name in blood on the communal house pillars and stick charms in all directions. Meanwhile, Mr. Moy and the other 3 returned, carrying a bottle of newborn blood, a rare item used to ward off evil spirits that Mrs. Diem had kept from a ceremony many years ago. When the tiger spirit returned to the village, every house was quiet, but on the ground, its name was carved in bright red blood. It screamed in pain, its flesh cracked, blood gushed from its eyes and nose. But it was not dead. It raged, trampling the entire communal house yard, biting and tearing at anyone who was still breathing. Mr. Moy pulled out a 100-year-old sycamore trident engraved with a magic formation and gave it to Mr. Lap. "Stab it in the navel, right in the middle of its forehead, where the memories of the wronged souls reside." Mr. Lap, without hesitation, rushed forward like a moth to a flame. His screams mingled with the tiger spirit's. Slap. The tip of the trident pierced its forehead, blood spurting out like a fountain. It howled, then exploded into black smoke, dragging dozens of screaming figures back to the banyan tree. The banyan tree caught fire. The fire did not come from the outside, but from inside the tree trunk, glowing red as blood, burning until dawn. When the sky was bright, Mr. Moy stood among the ruins, his eyes filled with sadness. It is not dead, just pushed to another world. One day, when someone forgets its name or calls it by another familiar face, it will return. The villagers were silent. From then on, they never let their children go into the forest, did not leave their houses near the edge, and never called the dead after midnight. 3 days after the banyan tree fire, the whole village was immersed in an atmosphere of mourning. The incense smoke had not yet subsided when another body was found, dismembered, skin peeled off, heart gouged out, and a crescent-shaped claw mark carved on the forehead. Mr. Moy lay in bed, his lips purple, his breathing weak. Before he died, he whispered to Kang, his nephew. The fire burned its body, but the fire could not burn the souls of those it ate. Those ghosts were no longer bound by the tiger spirit. They were free and lost. Then he closed his eyes. The 4 oil lamps in his room went out at the same time, even though the windows were still closed. Kang heard a voice whispering close to his ear. "You don't remember me?" Kang turned his head, saw no one, only a claw mark in the dust on the ground. Teacher 2, who had fought the tiger spirit with the group, volunteered to guard the corpses. One night he saw a headless corpse crawl up, stagger towards another corpse, then lie on top of it. The 2 corpses hugged each other, melted together like hot clay, then merged into a new body, half human, half darkness. It turned its head to look at the teacher. Even though it had no eyes, Mr. 2 felt like he was being seen through to the core. The next morning, there was nothing left in the morgue. There was only a long trail of blood stretching out to the village road. The blood did not dry, but kept flowing as if it were still alive. In the villager's dream, everyone who had seen Nam's face began to dream of him. It was not a vague nightmare, but a dream that repeated itself every night. A forest, drenched in fog, they were forced to follow the familiar call. "Go home, I'll wait for you." Then in front of them was their own corpse, hanging upside down from a tree branch, neck broken, eyes wide open, mouth bleeding, and laughter coming from inside the corpse. When they woke up, everyone's hair fell out in clumps, their necks had purple rope-shaped bruises, and no one dared to look in the mirror anymore. Teacher 2 sighed. The tiger spirit is dead, but it left behind evil seeds in the memories of the living. Now the demon no longer needs a body. It resides in our memories, in our subconscious, where we are most vulnerable. At the end of the village, there was a child named Min, who was the first person to see Nam return after his death. From that day on, he could not speak, only sitting and doodling on the ground all day. One night, his mother woke up because she heard murmuring sounds coming from his room. But Min was still mute. How could he speak? She opened the door and fainted when she saw her son standing in the middle of the room, his tongue hooked out and hanging on the altar, and the wall covered with words written in blood. "It is still here. It is waiting for us to forget." A week after burying Mr. Moy, Kang found his old, tattered notebook hidden under the bed. The cover had a drawing of a tiger lying in a circle of fire. Inside were ancient sealing rituals and a bright red warning. A tiger does not die when cut. A demon does not dissolve when burned. They die when forgotten, but they also come back to life through memory. Every time someone mentions Nam, the gates of hell open once more. Kang was stunned, because for the past few days the whole village had not stopped talking about Nam. That night, in the middle of the communal house yard, a faceless shadow stood motionless. In its hand it held an old, blurry photo. The photo of Nam and Han on their wedding day. Both their faces were scratched by claws. A soft hiss rang out. "Thank you for remembering me." Kang, after reading through Kumoy's notebook, found an object wrapped in 3 layers of red cloth hidden in the old altar drawer. A small bronze mirror, the back engraved with a spell, the front cracked and bleeding dryly around the edges. On the mirror was written in shallow blood, "Only those who dare to look straight into their own souls can see the door." That night, Kang tried, and when the mirror reflected his face, it was not his, but Nam's face, grinning widely, his eyes like two holes of burning ashes. At that moment, under Kang's feet, the ground cracked. From that crack, a mouth opened wide, exhaling a cold breath like a morgue, and a gray hand crawled up, grabbed Kang's leg and pulled him down. At that moment, a bell rang 3 times slowly, echoing through the village. A hunched-backed woman wearing an indigo shirt appeared at the gate of the village hall. Mrs. Lu, 92 years old, a survivor from the old Tamja village, where Ka Van was first sealed. She disappeared from the map for 60 years. She leaned on a cane, her face was full of scars, her mouth was toothless, but her eyes were as bright as burning fire. "You guys are ignorant. The old seal is a blood address. It only works when its name is completely forgotten. You guys just open your mouths and say, Nam, Han, tiger spirit. And you raise it up by calling its name." She took out a clay jar from the basket. Inside it was something that was making noise like maggots hitting each other. "This is Ka Van's real toenail, still preserved from the first time of the exorcism. It must be brought back to the exact place where the old blood was buried, the burnt banyan tree, now a pit of hell." She looked at Kong, the only person in the village who was not haunted. "You are the last blood of the ancient seal keeper. If you don't bury its nail yourself, it will use your face to kill thousands more people." That night, Kong, Mrs. Lu, and Mr. Tu set out. They brought with them a clay jar containing Ka Van's claws, a lamp burning with rooster's blood, a string with 7 tongues hanging from it, those of people whose tongues had been gouged out by the tiger spirit. The forest that night was not normal. Every tree trunk was bleeding. The leaves of the forest were rotting. With each step under their feet, they heard the sound of children crying, then falling silent. When they reached the banyan tree, there were no more trees, but a deep black abyss shaped like a jaw, with human tongues undulating like moss. Mrs. Lu began the sealing ceremony. "Blood must be shed, then there will be blood to curse. The spirit must scream, then there will be spirit to protect." She cut Kang's hand, dropped 3 drops of blood onto the claws in the jar. The claws shook, then smoked. Nam's scream echoed throughout the forest. "I'm still here. I will wear your mother's face. I will use your voice to sing a lullaby to the children who died in their mother's womb." The whole forest shook. Hundreds of arms reached out from the hole, but Mrs. Lu shouted loudly, "Ha Van, Ha Van," called her real name 3 times. All hands withdrew. She dropped her claws into the hole. At the same time, Kang threw the oil lamp in. Boom! A shocking explosion rang out. The blue fire burned, not spreading, but sinking into the hole, as if burning each layer of cursed memories. The next morning, the whole village woke up as if from a long dream. No one remembered anything. No one saw Nam or Han. The walls of the house were no longer bloody. The dogs barked again. The wind shook the leaves again. But in the last sleep of the day, when Kang looked in the mirror and washed his face, he saw his reflection smiling, but his mouth did not open. 10 years later, Dongtam village changed its name. People called it Bin An Hamlet, rebuilt from ashes, moss, and nameless dry bones. The survivors of the past, Kang, Mr. Tu, Mrs. Lu, all died. Kang died in his room. The cause was unknown, but his room's mirror was smashed and the glass cut deep into his hand with the word, "Forget." No one in the village dared to hang mirrors anymore. That year, an ecological survey team from the city came to the countryside to study the ecosystem recovering from ancient forest fires. In the team was a student named Mai, majoring in journalism, curious and adventurous. She went to Bin on Hamlet, where no one lived except a blind old woman named Mrs. Sao Dan, who lived in a wooden house at the end of the forest. She did not receive anyone, but when she heard that Mai was from the city, she invited her in and said, "You smell like a mirror." Mai was surprised. "A mirror? I only brought a camera," she laughed dryly. "That camera of yours is also a mirror. Mirrors capture memories, and here, memories kill people." Mai took a picture of Mrs. Sao Dan, then checked it again. There was no one in the picture. No woman, no house, no tables and chairs. There was only a gray forest, and in the lower corner, a pair of wide-open eyes staring straight at the lens. Mai felt a chill down her spine and was about to retreat when Mrs. Sao asked, "Do you know who Nam is?" Mai nodded. "Yes, I read old documents. I heard that there was a man named Nam who died and his body was eaten by a tiger." Mrs. Sao Dan suddenly screamed, her blind eyes filled with blood, her hands tightly gripping Mai's shoulders. "You mentioned his name!" "You opened the door again, you fool." That night, when she returned to the homestay near the hill, Mai printed the photos. The printed photo was not the same as the one she took. In the photo was a wedding. The groom was wearing mourning clothes. The bride had no head. The scene was an old village communal house, with a half-burned banyan tree and a figure standing on top of the tree, his back turned, wearing Mi's coat. The printer did not stop. It continued to print out photos that had never been taken. A wide-open mouth swallowing a human body. A smoldering wooden house with broken glass scattered all over the floor. And finally, a mirror reflecting an empty room with only a line of blood written backwards. "I am your memory." After that incident, Mai disappeared. But a few weeks later, a mysterious YouTube channel appeared online called Red Memory. The content is short clips filmed at night, with the sound of wind whistling, people laughing, and images of rooms without mirrors. Each video ends with the words, "Those who remember will open, those who forget will live." And the viewers gradually lose sleep. They see their faces in the mirror, not moving. Some stick out their tongues, some scratch their faces. The police cannot find the poster. The last person who looked into the lens said, "I am not afraid of ghosts. I am afraid of myself when I remember." Today, in Bin-An village, there is a small wooden house in the forest, still uninhabited. There was only one thing left in the house. The old cracked mirror. The blood on the edge had dried. Whoever happened to look into it would see a man in hunting clothes, smiling and whispering, "Thank you for remembering me."